The single most dangerous day of your entire life is already behind you. It was not a car crash. It was not an illness. You do not remember it, and you survived it by a margin far thinner than you would ever guess. It was the day you were born, because for almost the whole of human history, being born and giving birth was one of the deadliest things a human being could possibly do. Not a disease, not a war, the simple, natural act of a new person entering the world. And the reason why is one of the strangest, most uncomfortable facts about your own body, and it has been quietly shaping our species for 2 million years. Because here's the thing that should stop you cold. Almost every other animal on Earth makes this look effortless. A horse gives birth, and within an hour the foal is standing, wobbling, and walking, while the mother goes calmly back to eating grass. A cat has a litter behind the sofa and is completely fine by dinner time. A deer, a whale, a mouse, they deliver quickly, usually alone, usually without a sound, and get on with their lives. And then there is us. For a human, birth can last a full day. It can tear the body apart, and for most of history it killed mothers and babies at a rate that would genuinely horrify you. So why? Why is the single most natural, most necessary thing our species does also one of the most dangerous? The answer is a head-on collision between the two things that make you human, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Stay with me. Let us be honest about how bad it really was, because the numbers are staggering. For most of human history before modern medicine, somewhere around 1 in every 100 births ended with the mother dead. That sounds small until you remember that a woman did not give birth once. She gave birth many times, and the risk stacked with every single one, so that death in childbirth was, for thousands of years, one of the leading ways a woman could die. And for the babies, it was even worse. A huge share never survived their first day. Birth was not a happy, safe little event that occasionally went wrong. For most of our history, it was a genuine brush with death, every single time for both of them. And this was never some distant statistic to the people living it. For most of history, the danger was so real and so close that in many cultures, a woman approaching her due date would quietly prepare as if for a journey she might not come back from. Saying her goodbyes. Setting her affairs in order. Because everyone knew that some mothers walked into that room and did not walk out of it. The dread of childbirth runs through our oldest stories, our myths, our religions, our folklore. It is one of the deepest and most ancient fears our whole species has ever carried, and it was completely rational. This was not a fear of the unknown. It was the fear of something people watched happen, over and over, to the women they loved most. And this is not just what nature is like. This is what nature is like for us, specifically. Out in the animal world, birth is mostly quick, quiet, and solitary. Most mammals slip away on their own, deliver in minutes, and need no help from anyone. There is no screaming. There are no days of agony. There is no real chance the mother simply dies on the spot from the act itself. A gorilla, our close cousin, usually gives birth easily and alone, often at night, and is moving around with her newborn almost immediately. So humans are not just a little harder than the rest. We are a bizarre, screaming, dangerous exception to a rule that the entire rest of the animal kingdom follows without a second thought. So here's my first question for you, and I really want the answer in the comments. Do you know the story of your own birth? Were you an easy one, or the kind of birth people still tell stories about years later? Were you a C-section? Were you early, late, breech, huge? Go ask whoever was there, because almost every family has a birth story that is secretly a survival story, and I want to read yours. Drop it below, and keep it in mind, because by the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why it was so much harder than it should have been. Now to the collision itself. To understand why human birth is so brutal, you have to meet the two forces that crashed into each other inside our ancestors. And the first one is something you did the moment you got out of bed this morning. We stand up. We walk on 2 legs. And that single decision, made by our ancestors millions of years ago, quietly rebuilt the human body from the ground up, including the one part of it that a baby has to pass through. Walking upright is fantastic. It freed our hands. It let us travel huge distances. It is one of the deepest reasons we succeeded. But it came with a hidden bill, and that bill would eventually be paid in blood, in the delivery room. Here's what standing up actually did. In an animal that walks on 4 legs, the pelvis can be wide and open because it is just a frame slung between the legs. But the moment you balance an entire body upright on 2 legs, the pelvis has to change. It has to become a strong, compact bowl, tilting inward to carry the weight of everything above it and to keep all your organs from simply falling out the bottom. That bowl is a marvel of engineering for walking and running. But it did something fateful to the hole in the middle of it, the birth canal. It made it narrower, more twisted, and locked to a size that cannot really grow any bigger without wrecking your ability to walk, so the exit was now a tight, rigid ring of bone. Remember that. Now the second force, and it is the one we are most proud of. At the same time, our hips were getting narrower, something was getting dramatically bigger. Our brains. Over roughly 2 million years, the human brain ballooned to about 3 times the size of a chimpanzee's, an explosion of gray matter that gave us language, tools, art, and the ability to understand this very sentence. And a big brain needs a big skull to house it. So our babies started arriving with enormous heads far larger relative to the body than any other primates. A giant, precious, ever-growing head. Now put the two forces together and you can already feel the disaster coming. A bigger and bigger baby head, trying to pass through a narrower and narrower ring of bone. That is the collision. Scientists call it the obstetric dilemma, and it is one of the tightest, most dangerous fits in the entire human body. Because the numbers are terrifyingly close. The widest part of a newborn's head is very nearly the same size as the narrowest part of the mother's birth canal. We are talking about a margin of millimeters. In most mammals, the baby slips through a passage with room to spare. In a human, the head is jammed right up against the absolute physical limit of what the mother's skeleton will allow. And it gets worse, because the passage it has to squeeze through is not even a straight line. And to really feel why this is so dangerous, picture what actually has to happen. Labor begins, and the mother's body starts trying to force a nearly too big head through that ring of bone. The contractions that do it are some of the most powerful forces the human body can generate. Hour after hour of them, building and building. The baby is driven downward, harder and harder, into a gap that barely admits it, and there is no reverse gear. Once it has truly started, that head is coming through the pelvis, or the whole process fails, and for most of history, failure meant both of them died. This is why human labor is so long, so agonizing, and so exhausting, measured in hours and sometimes well over a day, while a cat is finished in minutes. The mother is quite literally pushing a large object through an opening that is almost too small to let it pass at all. And this is the part almost nobody knows, and it is genuinely astonishing. The human birth canal is not a simple tube. It is a twisted, corkscrewing passage that changes shape as it goes down. At the top, where the baby enters, the widest space runs from side to side. But at the bottom, where the baby exits, the widest space runs the other way, front to back. Think about what that means for the baby. Its head is widest in one direction, and to get through, it cannot simply slide straight down. It has to physically rotate, corkscrewing, turning its head partway through the journey to line up with each part of the passage in turn. A human baby is not born in a straight push. It is born by twisting its way out through a moving target of bone with millimeters to spare. And that single fact, the twist, changes everything about how our species gives birth. And the baby is not a passive passenger in this fight. It has a trick of its own, and you can still see the evidence of it on a newborn today. A baby's skull is not one solid piece of bone. It is several separate plates that have not yet fused together, with soft gaps in between them. And as the head is crushed through that impossibly tight passage, those plates actually slide and overlap each other, letting the skull temporarily change shape and narrow to fit. It is called molding, and it is why so many newborns arrive with a strange, pointed, cone-shaped head that quietly rounds out over the following days. That famous soft spot on the top of a baby's head, the one you are always warned to be gentle with, is a leftover gap between the plates that had to shift to get it born. The baby literally reshapes its own skull to survive the journey. And if that just rewired something in your head, that is exactly what this channel is for. We take one thing you thought you understood, your body, your birth, your own beginning, and we pull on it until it turns into something you never imagined. So subscribe, because that twist leads straight to the strangest consequence of all. It is the reason humans are the only animal on Earth that cannot safely give birth alone. And that changed the entire story of our species. Here's where the twist comes back to bite us. Because of that final rotation, a human baby almost always emerges facing backward, away from the mother, staring at her spine. Now compare that to a monkey. A monkey baby is born facing forward, toward the mother, who can simply reach down, guide it out, wipe its face, and lift it to her chest, all by herself. But a human mother cannot safely do that. If she reached down and pulled her own backward-facing baby, she would be bending it against the natural curve of its neck and spine, risking real injury. So for the first time in the history of life, a mother physically could not deliver her own child safely on her own. She needed another pair of hands. And that is one of the most profound facts about our species. We are the only animal that routinely needs help to give birth. Every human culture ever studied, on every continent, has some version of the same thing: birth attendants, midwives, experienced women who gather around and help. It is not a modern invention. It is ancient, it is universal, and it goes back deep into prehistory. Birth, for humans, stopped being a private animal act and became a social one, a moment that pulls other people in, that demands cooperation, knowledge, and trust. The very danger of it forced us together. Sound familiar? It is the same story again. The naked, vulnerable ape that survives by needing each other. Now, I told you we are the only animal that struggles like this, and that is very nearly true. But there is one strange exception, and it is exactly the kind of dark twist evolution loves: the spotted hyena. Because of their own bizarre anatomy, female spotted hyenas give birth through an unusually long, narrow canal, and it is so brutally tight that a large fraction of firstborn cubs suffocate on the way out, and many young mothers are injured or even die delivering their very first litter. They are, in a sense, the other cursed species, an animal that also pays a savage price at birth for the way its body happens to be built. So we are not completely alone in this. We just have the most famous and most consequential version of the problem, because ours got tangled up with the exact things that made us human in the first place. Now you are probably shouting the obvious question at the screen. If the hole is too small, why did evolution not just make the hips wider? Problem solved. And for decades, the textbook answer was a beautiful, brutal trade-off. A wider pelvis, the theory went, would make walking and running less efficient, wasting precious energy with every step. So evolution was stuck balancing on a knife edge, between a pelvis wide enough to get the baby out and a pelvis narrow enough to move well, and the compromise it landed on left birth right at the ragged, dangerous edge of possible. For a long time, that was the whole story. But honesty demands I tell you it is now being seriously challenged, because when researchers actually tested it, they struggled to find much cost at all. Studies measuring people walking and running with different hip widths found that a wider pelvis barely hurts efficiency, if at all, which blows a hole in the classic story. So a newer idea has stepped in, and it is elegant. It says the real limit is not the hips, it is energy. A growing baby demands more and more fuel from the mother, and at around 9 months, she hits a metabolic ceiling, the point where her body simply cannot supply any more energy to a baby still inside her. So the baby is born not when it runs out of room, but when the mother runs out of power. The truth is probably a mix of both, room and energy, and scientists are genuinely still arguing about it. Hold that thought, because I want your vote later. But whichever limit hits first, the result is the same, and it is the thing that defines a human childhood. We are born too early. A human baby, to arrive as capable as a newborn monkey, one that can cling and hold its own head up, would need to stay inside far longer. But its head would never, ever fit. So we are pushed out into the world, half-finished. Soft skull, unfinished brain, unable to walk, unable to crawl, unable to even hold up its own head. Every other animal gets most of its building done safely inside. We do the most important construction of all, the wiring of that enormous brain, out here, in the open, exposed and utterly dependent on someone else. And just how early are we really talking? Look at our closest relatives and do the math, and the answer is startling. Based on our body size and the size of our brains, some researchers argue that a truly finished human newborn, one as developed as a baby ape that can cling and hold its head up, would need a pregnancy lasting far longer than 9 months. By some estimates, well over a year. Perhaps 18 to 21 months of gestation. But a baby that stayed inside that long would grow a head so enormous it could never, ever be born. So evolution slammed on the brakes. It pushes the baby out at 9 months, ready or not, at the very last moment before that head becomes physically impossible. Every human being is, in a real sense, born premature by the standards of our own biology, and then finishes wiring that giant brain out here, in the open air. And when this tight, twisting fit goes wrong, the results are as brutal as anything in nature. When a baby's head simply cannot pass, labor obstructs. Without help, it can grind on for days, and historically it was very often a death sentence for both the mother and the child together. This is not a rare edge case. This exact problem, a big head jammed against a narrow pelvis, was one of the great silent killers of women across all of human history, in every part of the world, generation after generation, long before anyone understood why it was happening. Your family tree is, quite literally, made only of the mothers who survived it. And the danger of the day itself is not even the whole bill, because the mother goes on paying it. Forcing that oversized head through the body can leave lasting damage to muscles, to nerves, to the pelvic floor that holds everything in place. Injuries that women have quietly carried for the rest of their lives, all through history. The human female body is asked to do something right at the edge of what a mammal skeleton can survive, and then, remarkably, to heal, and very often to turn around and do the whole thing again. When people talk about the sheer strength it takes to give birth, this is what they mean, and it is not a figure of speech. It is one of the most physically extreme things a human body is ever asked to do, and half of our species has been doing it at mortal risk since the very beginning. If this is landing for you, if you are looking at your own existence a little differently right now, take 1 second and hit the like button. It genuinely is the single clearest signal that tells the algorithm to show a deep dive like this to someone else who would find it as strange and as moving as you do. That is all it takes, okay? So how on earth did a species with such a dangerous design not just survive, but take over the planet? Here is the beautiful part. Our species did not solve this problem with our bodies. We never grew the perfect pelvis. Instead, we solved it with each other and with our minds. We solved it with the midwife who knows how to turn a stuck baby, with the knowledge passed from mother to daughter for 1,000 generations, and eventually with the entire edifice of modern medicine, with the C-section, a procedure that now safely delivers a baby that 100 years ago would have killed them both. We are the animal that was handed a broken, dangerous design and answered it not by changing our bones, but by outthinking them, and this rippled outward into everything about how we live. A mother left exhausted and injured by a dangerous birth, holding a completely helpless baby that cannot even lift its own head, is in no position to survive alone. She needs food brought to her. She needs protection. She needs help. And so the sheer difficulty of our impossible birth helped push humans toward the things we think of as the most deeply human of all. Lasting bonds between parents, extended families that share the load, whole communities built around the simple job of keeping mothers and babies alive. The danger of arriving in this world helped wire our species to take care of each other. We are cooperative in part because from the very first day of life, not one of us could ever have made it alone. And now the twist that turns this whole story around. Human birth is not dangerous because something went wrong with us. It is dangerous precisely because so much went right. The narrow, rigid pelvis that makes birth so hard is the price of standing upright and walking across a continent. The enormous head that gets stuck is the price of the biggest, most powerful brain in the known universe. Every terrifying thing about the way you were born is the receipt for the two gifts that made our species what it is: bipedalism and the big brain. We did not get a dangerous birth by being weak. We got it by being extraordinary. And there is genuinely good news, which we do not say often enough. In much of the world today, birth has been transformed from a brush with death into one of the safest journeys a person can take. It is one of the quiet, unglamorous triumphs of modern medicine, and it has saved an almost unimaginable number of lives. But make no mistake, the fundamental design has not changed one bit. The head is still too big. The passage is still too tight. That is exactly why C-sections are so common. We have not fixed the dilemma. We have just gotten extraordinarily good at managing it, birth by birth. Alright, this is the vote I promised you. Pick a side in the comments. Team Bones says the classic answer is right, that birth is a straight trade-off between a pelvis wide enough to deliver and narrow enough to walk. Team Energy says no, it is really about the mother hitting her metabolic limit at 9 months, and the hips are a bit of a red herring. Scientists are still fighting about this one, so genuinely, which side are you on? Pick one, tell me why, and go argue about it below. I will pin the best answer from each camp. So step back and look at the whole strange shape of it. You began as an impossibly tight fit, a big-headed baby corkscrewing backward through a ring of bone with millimeters to spare, in a process so dangerous it required other people just to survive it. The most perilous day of your life was the one you cannot even remember. And you walked away from it. Every single person you have ever met walked away from it. We are, all of us, the survivors of the hardest birth in the animal kingdom. And behind you stands something staggering, an unbroken chain of mothers stretching back 2 million years, and not one link ever broke. Every single one of your direct ancestors all the way down was a baby who made it through that impossible passage, and a mother who survived delivering them in a world with no doctors, no surgery, and no second chances. That is the line you come from. Every one of them beat the odds so that you could be here, sitting comfortably, watching a video about how astonishing it is that you exist at all. So the next time you hear a baby cry, or you look at an old photo of yourself as a newborn, remember what that tiny, soft-headed, helpless little creature actually pulled off. It survived the most dangerous journey a human ever takes, and it did it on day one. And that birth story I asked you about at the start, go and treasure it, because it is the oldest survival story you own. If you made it this far, thank you, truly. Hit like, subscribe, and drop your team, bones or energy, in the comments. Because that helpless, half-finished baby raises one more question that is even stranger than this one. Why are human babies born so completely, so uniquely useless? That is the next video. I will see you there.